Peter, thank you so much for joining us today.
Okay.
I know that even getting here to do this, because you live in Southern California,
Yeah.
was a lot today. So I really just want to say thank you. Those of you who don't know, I'm Rebecca. I am the Interim Executive Director here at Somatic Experiencing International. And Peter, I don't think you need any introduction for anyone who isn't aware. Peter is the founder of Somatic Experiencing International, the founder of Somatic Experiencing and of Somatic Experiencing International as an organization. And I think, anybody can go and look up all of the amazing things that you have done with your work, with your life, all of that. But I think what I want to share is, in some ways, is who you are. From the minute I've ever met you, Peter, your heart shines through in everything you do. And even this webinar, how it came to be was I got a text message from somebody in the LA community who said, Peter asked me to reach out to you. And so I called you. And then you said,
Oh,
let's do
oh,
this webinar.
great.
And and I just want to say thank you. Your heart always shows up. And even being here, you live in Southern California and
At
here
least part
anyway.
of the time, yeah.
Well, you're there now. And so
Right.
and it's an honor, really, to get to hear this, to connect with you, to watch you share with the world how much you care about people and goodness and aliveness. And so thank you for doing this.
Mm,
Um,
sure.
I will turn this over to you.
Okay.
Oh, folks, if you have any questions, you can certainly put them in the chat.
Oh,
Um,
yes,
we were
please.
gonna try to live stream this. I don't know that it's working. And so I apologize, but we will definitely get a recording up in the probably early next week. It'll be edited and captioned and all of that. So um, thanks, all you.
Okay. So I assume that these are all or mostly somatic experiencing people.
That was the expectation. Yeah, we opened
Okay.
it up to folks in LA first and then opened it up to the larger community,
Okay.
but
Good.
definitely said it
Good.
was for
Yeah.
people who've
Yeah.
taken the training.
Yeah. I just wanted to kind of add onto what you were just talking about is that this is the new normal. I mean, not just fires, but fires, floods, hurricanes, storms, all kinds of natural disasters, not so natural, really. And I'm hoping that all of you will relate to the need that the affected people have and to respond in some ways with the gifts that you have that you've learned to be able to help these people. And right now, of course, there's the mega fire in Los Angeles. Apparently, there's also a fire about 10 miles from here near San Diego. And so, how to prepare for responding to those kind of events, those kind of large scale disasters, natural disasters? And I have some ideas that I want to take some time to share with you. And but first of all, when you go into an area like this, let's take LA for example, the people there are really deeply, deeply in pain. There's tremendous loss, grief, fear, anger, rage, all of these emotions that come up in trauma, they come in an escalated form. And so we have to be present when we respond. We have to get present first because if we're not present, we won't be able to help them hold all of those emotions and feelings and worries. And of course, their first need is to take care of their basic needs of food, of lodging, of knowing whether people in their families are okay, that kind of communication. And so, whatever can be done to help there, and also to give money for their needs which are again vast, getting other housing, and not even knowing whether their houses will be rebuilt. So it's a pretty sad situation. So anyhow, what we have to do before we go there is we have to center ourselves. We have to center and ground ourselves, because that way we can be a big enough, a large enough container to help the people, the affected people, be able to see, because so many of them are still in shock. And again, you don't want to be trying to have people talk about, their feelings. They may come up, of course, but the main thing is really to, again, to be a big enough container, and that you can help them move out of the shock. And the ways to do this are in some way simple, but they also, again, bring up a lot of other feelings and sensations. So I'd like to just do the exercise with you right now. And so that you'll be able to do it with each other when you're coming to, an affected area, to prepare yourselves and each other. And then when you're there, I presume you'll be working in groups, because otherwise there's too many people to do this individually. But of course, that should be available as well. Um, yeah, people are sending back. They've had a lot of friends and people in LA. It's heartbreaking, really is what it is. It's heartbreaking. And so let's just do a exercise you probably have done a gazillion time, if not more. And just to use that as a way to get in contact with yourself and your own feelings and worries and expectations. So this is, of course, the Wu exercise. And the idea is to take an easy, easy full breath. And on the exhalation, to make the sound Wu in a sustained manner, as though it's coming, well, it is coming from your belly, and letting the breath and the sound all the way out. And then just allow the next breath to come in when it's ready, to come in on its own, filling belly and chest, and then repeat. And we'll do that maybe a couple, 2 or 3 times. So I'll demonstrate it first, and then you all can join me. Okay? So, we feel the vibration in the belly, but also in the hands and the legs and the feet. The breath and the sound all the way out. Wait for the breath to come in, filling belly and chest. Oh, that's not good. And then repeat. Okay, you with me? Okay, so easy full breath. And allow the breath to come in again, filling belly and chest. And just one more time. Feel the vibration, feel your hands, feel your feet, feel the way your feet are contacting the ground, feel the vitality and aliveness in your hands, the tingling vibration in your hands and your feet and your belly and anywhere else in the body. And especially notice what's going on inside your belly, sensations, feelings, thoughts, images, memories, whatever comes up. And maybe just share with somebody, an imaginary person it can be, or to the chat, what you're noticing, what you're experiencing in doing the exercise. So maybe just give some feedback to each other, and I'll be monitoring that as well. release of tears, seeing my childhood home in Palisades. Oh gosh. Mm, yeah. Anything else? Sadness, yeah, seeing friends. Gentle emotions, good. Looking at our nausea, and again, just let it pass. It will. Sorrow. Also, the sorrow will pass. The waves will pass. They're like the crests of waves. They come, they reach a peak, and then they settle back into the ocean of sensations and feelings. More space in my body for the feelings. Exactly. That's the idea. Not to have the people relive the events, but to have a bigger space in the body to experience whatever it is that's going on, deep, quiet. My body is more deeply present with some emotions from earlier today. Sadness, so sorry. Yeah, yeah. So let's get back to some very basic SE principles. So how do you know when somebody is likely to be in shock? Well, they are very likely to be in shock, period. But you see sometimes where they're kind of like staring out into space, or if you're with them, it's sort of it seems like they're looking at you, but they're really looking through you or looking to the side of you. If their pupils are dilated or very constricted, or their heartbeat is very rapid or very slow, or a rhythmic going from fast to slow, these are all indications of shock, of traumatic shock. So what you want to do is first just be there with your feet on the ground, with your hands. And if it's appropriate and they accept it, to just hold their hands and be there with you, be there with you and with them. So to get some beginning of feelings of safety, of possibility, and that can make a big difference. Obviously, we can't change the situation as it is, but we can enhance their and our sense of resilience. And just to let them know with your presence and with words that you're there with them, that you're there for them. And if they're able to make eye contact, to make some eye contact with soft eyes, with your soft eyes, and see if they can soften their eyes to meet your soft eyes. And again, there may be, very likely will be waves of feeling, of sensation. So again, just to stay there with them. Again, helping them hold that emotional space, that sensorial space, and move through. And I think it's also important that they have a resource where they can reach some of you if or when they have other questions or needs, so that you can help cull them together. Yeah. So again, getting there by getting in here first. And I recommend that you do that in pairs or triads or how many or groups, and just do the exercise and be with each other, because that being with each other is going to help you be with them as the other, as other. So those are some of the main things that I like to impart using the exercise. Sometimes it can be helpful to do it standing. And you've seen me do it sometimes. Again, asking permission, or if they're sitting even, to have each person just put their arms on the shoulders of another person so that they can help feel that containment. And usually there'll be an inner movement, a very gentle swaying from back and forth. And again, just to take note of that and to just encourage them to let it happen, because again, that's that intrinsic rhythm, that cerebellar rhythm. that is about calming the whole nervous system. Yeah. So maybe I'll take some questions now and some feedback that you might have, and then I will try to
Thank
respond to
you.
them.
So there have been some questions in the chat already, and one that I think is, that came up earlier is how can we do the centering that you're talking about when still in the disaster zone?
When you're in this disaster zone,
Yeah.
well, you have to take a place where it's safe enough and do it there. And you know, when we responded to I think it was 2005, to that tsunami that wiped out a good part of Southeast Asia.
Mhm.
So a group of the SE people went there. And so every morning before they went out to the villages, and every evening when they came back, um, we were staying in a hotel. The hotel gave us the use of their facilities. But we would go down to the beach, which again was a kind of, in a way, symbolic way of saying that, you know, that we want to honor the ocean and not have it just be our enemy. And one of the SE therapists is also a Qigong master, and he led the group in exercises like this. And then when the people from the hotel looked down to the beach and they saw us, and they asked us what we were doing, and we explained, and then they came and asked if they could participate and said, of course, you're welcome. And they came down the next time. And afterwards, they said how much of a difference it made, that they didn't feel that the ocean was their enemy anymore. And they felt much calmer inside. So again, when you help one person feel calmer, then they will help other people feel calmer, and it'll spread. I don't want to use that expression, like flowing rivers. Yeah.
Peter?
Yeah. And so again, find a place where you're safe enough, out of probably out of the danger zone, whether it's a house or an area or an outdoor area far enough away where there's no imminent danger. And again, get yourself centered in yourself and each other. And then presumably you'll be able to have people come to an area where groups of people can come to an area where it's safe enough for them to feel not safe, but just safe enough to where you can work with them in a group. I don't know if that's been taken care of, but if not, that would be a high priority, a first priority, to get a place where groups of people, anywhere from a half a dozen to several dozen, or even just a studio that can hold more than that. So to just do a little research, and I'm pretty sure, like the experience that we had in Thailand, that people will want to offer their places in Thailand. The Buddhist monks um, asked us when they saw what we were doing, asked us to work with the children. And the reason, or one of the reasons for that, is that the children didn't know the Dharma yet, so they didn't know what to do with pain, with emotional pain, and so they gave us their temples to use as a working center to work with the children, but then also to bring people in to that as a safe place. And Buddhism felt with many people as a safe place.
That's beautiful, and thank you. And when we announced this webinar, certainly it was in response to what is happening at the time in Los Angeles and now
Sure.
throughout Southern California. Um, and we also, I think you know this, but we also got I saw a news article about a fire at a ski resort in Turkey. And as you know, we have
That's
a
right.
large community in Turkey. And so
That's right.
they're a large SE community. And
Yep.
so somebody reached out and asked about the webinar. And so I'd just like you for a moment, if you could, to speak to how do you respond similarly and different to something like what's happening in Southern California versus something that is a fire, the same,
Right,
like,
right. But they're both fires, of course.
right?
But in LA, the fire has wiped out entire communities, or the buildings in entire communities. And this was a single event in Turkey. I mean, it's a horrible event. I'm in no way diminishing it. And I'm glad because I know we have a wonderful SE community in Turkey, really great people, wonderful people there. But also to go there and again to be there for those people, for those families who've lost lives, and just to be there because grief will find its way through, but they need to have a support to ride that wave, that wild wave through, and also that these feelings will continue to come up for them. They absolutely certainly will. And again, that you're available because again, it's easier in the sense that you have a a single event, but you also then can work specifically or with those people and also be a resource for them after you work with them so that they can continue maybe even to do groups at at different times after you work with them. And I obviously you're not going to be able to work with them in the hotel, but to first find a place again in the general area. Well, actually, in any area, because I guess it was a ski lodge, so probably many people are coming from all different parts of Turkey, maybe even from Greece or other countries. Um, so that again, they have a place that they can contact you by Zoom, and you can continue to be with them and help them to manage these horribly difficult emotions that are coming up and loss that's affecting them.
You. Um, Maggie Klein is here and mentioned about Thailand as well in the comments,
Yeah,
and there's lots more questions, but I'll read Maggie's comment. In Thailand, we had to titrate the looking toward the ocean. The hotel staff did the qigong first in a conference room until they felt comfortable enough to look toward the sea. Um,
right. Yeah,
And we did two meetings, one with Qigong in the morning, and then after we met with people, we debriefed and we worked with each other. Somebody asked in the
exactly.
chat about self-care, and so we shared and we were helped by our colleagues to ground and to release our own secondary shock.
Right. And again, that's what I was talking about at the very beginning and demonstrating. Because again, shock is an energy. It's not just something that people feel in themselves or don't feel numb in themselves, but it's in the entire area and probably really ultimately in the whole world community. You know, trauma has the possibility to separate people from each other, but it also has the possibility to unite. And one of the things I'm going to be doing this summer is a program with a colleague, Thomas Hubel, on working with large groups of people to help them process their own sorrow, their own grief at the state of the world about what we see, every direction that we go. And I think that shared grief is something that really can unite us because more than anything in the world now, that's what we need. Because otherwise, there's just chaos and I don't even have the word yet, but where there's such a lack of civility among people, and that we can hopefully help bridge that and unite people more together. Because again, in the world, this will be happening more and more and more. There's no question about it. Even if people stop using fossil fuels, fossil fuels
that too.
today, this still is going to go on for quite some time. And so we need to prepare ourselves for these kinds of things. and, prepare ourselves in making houses, for example, that are less fire prone, but also readying ourselves to respond to the human costs of these natural disasters. And there will be, you can, I don't have to convince you of this. I'm sure everybody knows it, that this is spreading, and it's spreading throughout the world and anywhere and everywhere. So can we use this to unite the world? I hope so. I think really that's our only help, our only hope, our only help and hope.
I agree. I think I'm going to quote you from this weekend. So we had the annual faculty forum this past weekend, and Peter, thank you for coming.
Sure.
And when you came, you said something deeply profound that I think is really pertinent to right now, which is SE is not only about resolving trauma. It is about opening to aliveness, vitality, and goodness. It's about goodness and human kindness.
Yeah,
And I think
that's
this is
right.
what you're speaking to right now.
That's right. And I think that's the hope, because trauma is a fact of life. But two things, it doesn't have to be a life sentence, and it can unite us
Right.
in our shared suffering. And yeah,
So I so deeply appreciate and love that, because I think, when we think about what SC is and can be in the world, this is really that.
yeah,
It's this way of connecting and sharing in this
that's right.
space. So thank you. There are lots more questions. So
Please.
one here, I
And by
think,
the way, self-care again is essential, self-care with each other, because again, if we don't do that with each other, we're not going to be able to do that effectively with people who are in crisis.
right. Thank you. This one, I think, ties to your point about the ongoingness of these situations and disasters. A question in the chat of, I'm in Asheville, so recent hurricane.
Oh gosh, yeah, I've been working with people there too. Yeah,
Can you speak to the fatigue many on the ground are experiencing several months out when the world has moved on, as disaster after disaster
right.
strikes? How can we complete, in quotes, the care of a community, the care a community needs?
Yeah, to stay in contact with each other, and for the SE people and other therapists that are there to continue to be available. It will, again, like all grief, it comes in waves. Also, one of the symptoms of grief is kind of an apathy, a shutdown, kind of like a pervasive depression. And it will linger. It does. That's its nature. So we want to again to say this is not a one-time shot. It's something that we need to continually to attend to. Um, and and after the shock starts to wear off, then, as I say, a lot of the emotions and a lot of the fatigue, the lingering fatigue is there. So they also need more active work, like what we do with the Smobies, but just like, and again, just to do that enough to help the people come out of the apathy, out of the shutdown, and restore some modicum of vitality and aliveness. And again, to do it in groups. Often when I've done it in groups, we do it for a little while, and then everybody is laughing. They're giggling. It's like a room full of kindergarten children giggling and giggling and giggling. So again, yes, thank you, to work also with the energy, with the aliveness, because that's where resilience resides.
Laughter. I thank you. It's a
Laughter.
very such a
Yeah,
or
it's a very important healing emotion. And yeah, and you'll see it. And that's also really letting you know that the shock is coming off, is dissipating.
Mm, that's that's wonderful. Thank you. So this is a comment, but I think it really speaks to what you're talking about with this safe enough space. Somebody wrote in the chat, I'm watching this from Malibu on my phone with power still cut off from high winds.
Yeah,
Feeling both out of it and still in it at the same time.
yeah,
Titrating between safety and lack of basic infrastructure needs.
yeah, yeah. As I said in the beginning, probably the single most important thing that anyone can do is help people get the basic resources that they need to go on with their lives, and also to prepare ahead of time. You were talking about being in, I guess, in Malibu, and as far as I know, the fires aren't yet in or aren't in Malibu, um, but to prepare in case they do come. I've been contacting with a very dear friend who lives between Topanga and Malibu, and thankfully she's okay, Betsy Politan, and she's now with some friends staying in Santa Barbara. And if there's any place that people can go where you have friends, family, colleagues, that you can be in a place which is safer from the disaster, please reach out to them. And I'm sure that most of them will be glad to reach out back to you.
Beautiful. It's interesting you mentioned her because as this all started, somebody reached out to me, how's Betsy, right? And I think that is a demonstration of exactly what you're talking about, of this SE community that is, it's not this, right? We hold each other. The
That's
broader
right.
and bigger and farther we are from each other, the more we can hold each other together. So well, how much it has grown and held and is allowing exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Somebody asked a question here about a different kind of numbness. The question is, one thing that I have found difficult is, since I work in Zoom and in person, to be
Mhm.
working in so many categories of trauma and phases of crisis at once. Working
Yeah.
with many people in the fires and people in other places that are working on past trauma, I started to get numb to anything other than the immediate.
Yeah. Yeah. Past traumas, of course, will come up. There's no question. But you don't want to divert it there, because you want to be with the first aid, the trauma first aid, the emotional first aid. It's not the time to have people work on their traumas. I mean, of course, if it just emerges, you don't have a big choice. But again, you don't want to make a thing out of it. You want to just help them become more and more connected. And again, doing exercises like, I knocked something down. Oh, it's my autobiography of trauma, a healing journey.
That's how you know you're doing SE, right, Peter? You knock something over.
Great
Right.
book.
Anyhow, it's
Wonderful book.
available online. Oh, let me put it somewhere here where it's not going to fall on my head again.
Please don't.
Right. But let's see where we're. Yeah. There will be a time, and you have to kind of gauge this, when it will be then useful to help people work with the traumas that are coming up. And that's what you can work with, basically in your office, as the waves of shock wear off and the more immediate feelings of come and move through. So yeah, absolutely. But again, you don't want to divert from the trauma first aid to working with what's going on there in in what traumas are being activated and reactivated. And maybe to also say, look, it seems like something's coming up about some things that have happened to you in the past or a long time ago, and let's just get through this together here now. And then at a later time, please, there won't be any charge, come to my office and we can kind of take a look at this and see also if we can find you an ongoing therapist.
I think that's wonderful and really speaks to the ways in which SE shows up in different ways in different times.
Yes.
So kind of furthering that question, what about for SE practitioners who are working with people in crisis here, right, and doing what you're suggesting, and then also they have other clients and there's a sort of a numbness to the experience of clients who are not currently in a disaster zone?
So you're talking about in Colorado? No.
No, just anywhere. So if I'm a practitioner here in Phoenix and I'm working with somebody in LA, or I have 10 clients in LA, but then I have a few clients in Phoenix, how do I stay present with the ones in Phoenix who aren't in the disaster space here without numb to them?
Boy. Yeah, that takes a lot of bandwidth, actually. I think you kind of have to try to balance that, you know, to be available at least to some degree with your regular clients, but you have to keep enough of your energy to do the work that you're doing with people in the disaster areas.
Thanks. Yeah.
I think that
Um,
that's important. You have to prioritize not just your needs, but their needs, the needs of your clients and the needs of the people in the disaster zone.
Appreciate that. So I have a client who went through Katrina. How would
Yeah,
you support someone who has gone through multiple natural disasters?
oh, God, yeah. Yeah, like I was saying, these
Right.
things are not going to abate. They're going to continue and continue and continue. And as I recall, Katrina was handled terribly poorly,
Mm.
by the authorities. And that's another thing. If we could somehow get to some of the people, some of the authorities, and give them some trauma-informed information so that they can better respond to the people's needs, I think that could make a big, big difference, a really big difference. And everybody should have some of those skills. I consult with the Meadows. It's a premier addiction treatment center in Arizona, in Wickenburg, Arizona. And when I give them basic uh, skills and work with them in the group, I invite all of the people, for example, who go to the airport to pick up the patients and drive them there to the facility, and the people who pick up the phone and talk to people, because again, those are the people who are at the first end, and they really need that information. A few years ago, Mayor Garcetti asked me to do a thing for a group of therapists, policemen, and social workers who were working with children that were sex trafficked. I mean, a horrible, horrible, horrible thing. And so I said it, my appreciation. I am so glad that you are here, the police, the sheriffs, and the social workers, because you are the first responders. You are the ones that need to be able to convey to them that we're going to take care of you. We are going to keep you safe. And they've got to hear that, and they have to hear that from somebody in authority, which again, in this case, is the police, the sheriffs, and the social workers. So again, if you have any in to the people who respond in that way to disasters, to give them some basic tools, I think could be a really good thing that we can do if we can enter into that market.
That's the goal. We're working on it
Yeah,
very
yeah.
specifically, but yes,
No,
anything
absolutely.
here.
I think it's a really important one. Really
Yeah.
important.
It's interesting because we think a lot about SEI's mission, right? And getting this information out to as many people and places as possible. And that feels like one of, if not the most important next steps and ongoing steps. So I'm really grateful you said that. Um, so a couple questions actually similar. One is just recently here in the chat and another one earlier, but this idea of the air itself being toxic. And
Oh
so
yeah,
here the question is around the
right.
inescapable attack
Yeah, yeah,
dimension of
right.
living and working in
Yeah,
that zone.
yeah. Oy, 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 oy. I mean, thankfully, there presumably will be some rain this weekend. Hopefully, not flooding
Right.
rain, and that'll help take some of that pollutants out of the air. Um, but it's there, and it's an ever-present danger, and especially for the children.
Mhm.
Uh, but again, the more we can do to help people become more resilient in general in their body self, uh, the less deleteriously they'll be affected, I think, by all of that toxicity. And again, hopefully with the rain, uh, some of it will pass away. But it is a deep concern. And really, I don't want in any way to minimize it. Even though we've had some fires here, we haven't been affected nearly to the same degree as in Los Angeles. Um, but you know, I don't know. Maybe some of you have some ideas. I would think it would be very important again for the authorities to be able to reach the general populace and to give them some kind of accurate information on how things are going with the pollution, whether the pollution levels are going down or not, because information is important. Information is also another key that is frequently lacking in large-scale disasters.
Right. For sure. So,
Oh, by the way, I don't know, I just remembered this. I don't know if I mentioned this, but one of the things that you also will notice, tell me if I'm being redundant, if people are in shock, that sometimes the heartbeat will be going very fast or very slow, and sometimes it'll shift the rhythm from fast to slow and slow to fast. That's also an indication that a nervous system indication that people are in shock. And again, you will find many, if not the majority of the people in that whole area that are in shock. And again, that's what needs to really be addressed first.
thank you. So we have a couple of questions here around languaging. One is around the language to share with children who have lost either friends' homes, their schools, their own homes. You know, you've done a lot of work with children, so.
Yeah. Basically, we will take care of you. That's the thing that kids need to hear more than anything else. We will take care of you. You know, and Maggie would be a good resource for children. She and I wrote a couple of books, co-authored a couple of books together on children, but that's really her field. And I think she can give you guidance on how to respond to kids' fears. Yeah, so maybe you can get her to do a webinar, particularly in working with kids.
Maggie, did you hear that? And so,
Yes, it's so important to let them know that all the feelings that they're having are normal,
Normal.
and that like Peter said, that they're going to be okay, and the adults are here to keep them safe, and everything will be okay. It'll be all right in the end, and we're here for you. I use coloring the sensations and emotions that are inside, and I find it very, very effective. And also coloring the opposites. They can color whatever they want on a piece of paper. In Taiwan, with the kids that didn't want to do the physical games, I had them in a classroom, and I had them draw whatever they wanted. I said that we were there to bring comfort, and we could talk about anything or share or play or draw. And I said, draw anything that you want. And 90% of the kids drew the disaster. And then I had them take another piece of paper and draw the opposite. And it was remarkable. Not one child didn't follow directions. They all just immediately drew the opposite. One little girl that drew no trees, nothing there, nothing growing, clouds in the sky, ended up drawing the trees were growing again and had coconuts. And then I used it to help her look at the two of them and see what her body was doing. And when it looked at the sad picture, she felt the scary feelings. You don't do this right away. We were there a month after.
Build up to it. Yeah.
1 month after. And she was able to describe the scary feelings in her belly. And then I did basic SE education. Like, that scary feeling is to give the energy to move. What part of your body would it like to go to move? And she right away, she said, I want to run. Look at your picture and see what you want to do. She said, I want to run to the high place along the stream. The first picture was dry land. The second picture was a beautiful flowing stream up into the mountain. And the
Beautiful.
sun was coming out. She had the vortex and the counter vortex in the drawing. So
Mhm.
That's
Yeah.
that's my
beautiful.
You know,
specialty, really.
yeah. And many of the kids, of course, will have lost pets,
Mm.
animals
Mm.
that have died in the fire, and even stuffed animals.
Mm.
And kids have a real attachment to their stuffed animals, and maybe also to give them some reassurance that, oh, of course you feel sad, because Cowie or Doggy or whoever it was such an important person, a certain important animal. But you know what? We will find another one for you. It won't be the same, but we will find another one, another animal for you, another stuffed animal for you. Mm.
That is.
Yeah. And again, loss of pets is more of the grief. And Maggie was suggesting maybe even drawing pictures of their pets and their stuffed animals as a way of kind of bringing them back to life.
And to your point about the ongoing tragedies of the world, Maggie has done a webinar about working with children in disasters. It was in
Oh,
response to the Humanitarian Response Committee a couple years ago. I posted a link here in the chat, and I am certainly up for Maggie to do a webinar for another one. So we'll talk. And
mm,
so another question about languaging is, so much of SE is about pendulating, and what
mm.
sort of language can we use that about to bring somebody into a pendulation away from the overwhelm in that moment, that is kind and understanding of the overwhelm and the shock and the trauma in that moment.
Yeah. Sometimes and of course, if I have one of the Hoberman spheres, I'll do that. But I sometimes will demonstrate. And sometimes when you get a feeling, it feels ucky and it feels squashed in like this. But every time there's a squashed in, there's an open and bigger, and another squashed in, and another bigger opening. And just seeing you do that, then they'll do it with you. And then they'll often say something like, oh, wow, I get it. It feels bad, and then it feels worse, and then it feels better, and then it feels okay.
That
Actually, I was with a colleague this afternoon, and he said something like, he said, the word pendulation is what's going to keep you famous after you die.
that's it.
I say, okay, no rush for that.
You better not leave us anytime soon, Peter.
Yeah.
Um, Somebody wrote in chat, pendulating Peter, LOL. That's your new nickname. Oh, so we've got. I mean, I think you were planning to stay for an hour, correct?
Yeah,
Okay,
but
so
if
we've got
there's more
about
questions, I can stay on a little bit longer. I have to make a call around 5:15. So
and you do maybe deserve to have a few minutes of rest. I happen to know you were rushing into the house to get here in time, and I want to say thank you again.
sure.
Um, so the um, So I think this is a really beautiful comment here in the chat. One thing I really learned in first aid work was to hold a different attunement, not so much attuning to the grief, but being reassurance. And I'm feeling that seeing Peter right now.
Yeah. Yeah, reassurance is important, and this too shall pass, and this too shall pass, and it will. Yeah.
So are there other things that you would like to share?
I think I'm mostly spent with what I talked about and the questions that were asked and the feedback that I've received from you all. I think we pretty well covered it. I think now it's time to respond and to set up the infrastructure so you can do the work that you need to be doing.
And And thank you, because I think that infrastructure is this community. And one
Yeah,
thing I will say for the SE community, and this was you, is it is designed to be set up to be grassroots.
Mhm.
It's the end of a long day. And so communities come together, but those communities now, thanks to technology and other things, can hold each other, right?
Yeah,
To your point of the Hoberman sphere, often that's how the SE community in general feels. This happened in Southern California, and we have people from around the world here curious about how to support Southern California, right? Something happens in Asheville, the community comes together. How do we support Asheville? How do we help the helpers is
yeah,
what we learned a lot from the humanitarian committee. And that's what you're suggesting. And so thank
yeah,
you. Um,
sure.
Thank you for gifting this community with that heart, that care, that
Yeah,
reassurance, as someone said.
right. But I think it's a universal knowledge. Somehow, whatever the reason, I tapped into it or it tapped into me, but it is universal.
It is.
And yeah, yeah,
And I feel obligated to share this. SEI is a nonprofit organization, and if you feel compelled, we have put the link in there a couple times to donate to SEI to continue to support this mission.
good.
We certainly want to continue to offer free webinars like this, certainly with you and others, Maggie, and to be able to continue to support this mission that feels so extra vitally important today. I've seen a lot of thank yous here for creating a space to come together and feel held. So thank you, Peter. Thank you so much for
Good.
your willingness to show up, for your willingness
Uh,
to share of yourself, especially in such a big day for you as well.
yeah. Well, okay. Stand tall, walk in beauty. That's a quote from my autobiography. Okay. All right. Take good care. Bye-bye.
You as well. Thank you, everybody, for being here.
Oh,
And we wish
bye.
you all the best and warmth and love.
Yeah.